Welcome back to another episode of the Jordan Checker podcast where I'm joined by Michael Bronfman. At just 18 years of age, Michael co-founded a groundbreaking tech product that was eventually sold to Zomato, a billion-dollar company. He helped scale Openpay in the buy now, pay later space to 250 employees globally in just a matter of 3 years. Currently, Michael is committed to Baresop, a sustainable focused business dedicated at eradicating 1 billion plastic bottles by the year 2030 while working with startups to take them to a $1.8 million valuation in just 90 days. In today's episode with Michael, we're going to talk about what the top 1% of businesses do that others do not, ensuring your business grows from day one, developing a marketable business idea, why we live in the best time in history to start a business, the pros and cons of getting investors on board, how AI changes the business and investor world, the mental challenges of business, work-life balance, and much, much more. But before we get into the episode, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, make sure you do subscribe and enjoy the episode. Thanks for joining me, Michael, today. Just in general, I wanted to ask the question of like a company like Uber, they can lose money as per se. How does that actually work? How do they continue to raise money and continue to grow and be like, we're not actually taking a profit?
Sure. So I think first and foremost, you look at tech companies like Uber that have been able to build a lot of,
That's right.
Let's start again.
That's fun.
you look at companies like Uber, who are tech companies that have been able to build first and foremost a lot of IP and also a lot of consumer demand. Okay. And as you think of Uber in particular, it's a two-way started marketplace. So you've got your consumer and you've got your restaurants. At the start, when they started offering their product, obviously they were offering it probably no fee, right? But as you build demand and product market fit and scale, you're able to charge whatever you want. So as they grow and they've got consumer demand and they've got power and they're able to bring a lot of value outside of just delivering a great service and a great product, they're able to increase their valuation. Okay. So what they then are able to do is they're able to sell the vision to an investor and go, hey, what we're looking to do is we're looking to do X, Y, Z. We're going to be that much bigger. And this is how we're going to be that much bigger. And we need the funding to be able to support that. Obviously, through a clear plan and being able to convince an investor saying, if I was to invest, let's call it $1 million in this exercise, there's a direct correlation in terms of return on investment, then an investor may back you.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's someone like when you talk of investors, like it's a company that size, likely you're not held to like one. Even in the early days, they would have probably had a multitude of people coming on board and seeing the idea, or is that or is it more common to have one as it starts to grow? Then you see extras come on board as well.
Well, how the funding fundraising process looks like usually is you start off with a family and friends round, where essentially you approach people in your network that know you, and essentially they back you for your idea and believe you've got conviction and are able to execute, right? After that, you go to what's called your angel investment community. So they're people that are sort of have a higher net worth and they're happy to invest in your business. And they write checks anywhere from $25,000 to $1 million, let's call it. Then you've got your family offices who are traditional high net worth families that are happy to back you or your businesses or whatever investment opportunities that come across your desk. At a certain check size. And then you've got venture capital funds, which are bigger check sizes.
So that's where someone's saying we've raised 50 million, 100 million. That's
correct.
Venture capitalists.
And I mean, venture capital fund just means that there's a vehicle and a bank essentially who has raised money through investors that are guaranteeing a return of some sort to their investors. And then they have a thesis that they put together and they go, we back, for example, impact-led businesses, or we might back SaaS B2B products, for example, and they follow that thesis. And as an investor, you buy into their thesis. And then they ultimately say, look, over the past 12 months, we've returned 12% a year. And then you're happy as a retail investor or as a sophisticated investor to just invest in a fund. But then obviously they've got a larger pool of money to be able to invest. So one fund might, for example, a venture capital fund might have multiple funds under the and they have different regulations and different things. One company I'm a shareholder of, for example, plays in the betting industry. and there's a venture capital fund very interested in investing in that company, but they've got restrictions around being able to invest in betting companies, okay, because of the regulatory component of it. So ultimately, what they're doing is they're creating another fund which won't have the regulatory problems to then be able to back that business and other businesses that are in that space.
I want to rewind a little bit, and you mentioned like IP for anyone out there that isn't aware of what IP is and what impact that has. Like you said, a company like Uber, maybe a Netflix or something, that is a powerful tool for them. Why is that the case?
Yeah, so when you talk about IP, it's all about intellectual property for those that don't understand what IP means. So essentially, IP could be anything from trademarking, which means no one can copy your name of the brand, for example, or it might mean that you've got patents in place. So one of my companies, we've got patents, for example, for the products. So you can't really duplicate that exact product. And that's all about building value IP. Then you might have developed a product, a tech product over the past 12 months, 24 months. That's a lot of IP you've built over the years, and that's got value, tangible value. So when you look at a company like Nike, for example, their logo alone, if you tried to buy the logo, would be worth trillions.
They're probably not going to sell it, are they? Like, because of how much value brand holds.
Correct. Even just that tick, right? And that's IP. They've been able to build IP. So whether they've got sales now or don't have sales now, that IP, that logo over the years, substantial amount of years, and what they've been able to create is worth a lot of money.
So that's where you start to look at that it's not just having a good product, that's a good start, having a good service, whatever it is, but like the thing you're building, the thing that you can't actually see is extremely important as well. Like, your brands, like say now, like just rising massively, a Gymshark or something like that as well. Like when you hear the words, you know exactly what it means. Like, but that's not a physical thing, or it's not on a stat sheet or anything like that either. Not a P&L. Like it is what it is. We know, when you go to buy a pair of shoes or a watch or something, that brand is attached to a bigger meaning and the value.
And how it makes you feel and what status it gives you and things like that. Like we all know that iPhones aren't the best phones on the market, but we have them because it creates the fact that you fit in schooling system, for example, amongst your friends and so forth and so on. So it's all about the feeling and what the feeling that they sell. Too often we see people starting businesses thinking short term, hey, like how much money is this going to generate me? And of course, revenue and profitability is like at utmost importance, and sales is very,
sort of thing.
Correct. But beyond that, if we're looking to build something long term that essentially lives beyond our lifetime, then we need to build a company that is a big, substantial company that you can let go of and it will still survive without you. Even bigger and better. Right?
And it's funny you say that, because only today, like, we've got rental car, like a Toyota Corolla hybrid or something. I'm sitting there, I'm like, for me, I drive an absolute shitbox back home. But I'm like, well, this is quite a nice car, whatever. And like, instead, let's take like the car market. You jump into a Mercedes versus a Toyota Corolla now, probably not a huge difference on tech. Like everything's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, whatever it is. People still buy Mercedes.
Status.
Because there's other reasons why you would choose that product over someone else's. So how does someone, like if you're, let's take a software product or a tech product, and someone, it's a build it once, sell to many sort of thing, obviously within reason. How does someone ensure, like generally they're cheaper products, how do you still give that status with a cheaper product through a brand or other means?
I think when you talk about cars, for example, you talk about, when you look at a brand in general, what does that brand mean as soon as you look at that brand? And for Toyota, for example, as soon as you say Toyota to me, a majority of people, they'll think reliability. When you look at Mercedes, luxury. When you think about Ferrari, fast, when we talk about building like sustainable business with good revenue and good status, we need to think about, when you talk about the in from one out to many, is like, how do you create meaningful partnerships, to allow you to move at a faster rate as you grow a business or launch a business?
When you say partnerships, is that reaching out to other businesses, or in the, now like creators, influencer, those sort of things, leveraging off their brand to build trust with your product or how you're marketing your copy and things like that, and your ads and everything as well?
Spot on. I mean, initially when you start off in business, you don't have large marketing funding. And so budgets are tight, and we know that there's so far we can go with our budgets. And a lot of people don't trust your brand or your product because they don't know you. And so all of a sudden, if you've linked your company with a company like Nike and your logo is seen with that logo every day, then you know, okay, well, I could trust them because they're doing some business with a trusted brand, right? Like one of my a company I'm a shareholder of, we're sponsoring the GP, for example. And it's a small business out of Victoria that's, looking to grow, and we're looking to build it into a multinational. And part of that is obviously doing things like sponsors of the GP, because you get people exposure to a global market, so by aligning yourself with other brands, you're able to leverage other brands' credibility. Right?
Why would a brand like that see that as a good idea to them though? Like, there's a massive upside to the small brand.
Yeah.
And the big brand goes, why the hell would Nike do something like that?
So you need to think about what's important to that brand. When I used to go into boardrooms and pitch to very large corporate deals, when we were very much a startup at Openpay, for example, you'd need to understand what makes that company tick, right? And what is the biggest pain point for that prospect? And so, for example, when we look at someone like a Bupa, for them, it's all about risk. So they hate risk. And so they want to know that as a valuable partner, you're going to mitigate their risk at any way possible. With Medibank, on the other hand, it's all about retention. So like, how do we retain more customers? And so if I know that my solution can allow you to retain more customers, and you're leaking $100 million a year, but my product is going to make sure that you only leak 10 million, then you've saved $90 million. Is that worthwhile to do something or not? Right? And they might not let you do a deal straight away. And they might say, okay, well, let's pilot across 15 customers, 100 customers, and then let's roll it out nationally. But you build that trust over time.
Just much of a muchness in terms of just a product to the market anyway. It's kind of like what's in it for them. Like, it's not just, this is our features. It's like, let's sell the results, sell the feeling that comes in, and how it solves a problem as well.
Correct. It's all about the problem.
Like flashy, I've got this cool app, and it's like, yeah, but what's it solving?
Correct. It's always about the problem. And you never go in asking for anything. You always go in saying, hey, this is what I'm going to give you. Add value to whatever they're doing, and then it'll reciprocate, right? Eventually will. If you offer a good service and you offer a good product, etc. So it's all about, how can I help you first and foremost? How can I solve your problem? A lot of the time you go in there and people don't see that they've got a problem, and they think, okay, their business is perfect. But actually you need to paint a picture, and you need to show them that they've got a problem.
And that's the same in just how you portray to someone like a bigger company that you're looking to partner with, but also how you frame your marketing in general. Correct. People sometimes aren't aware that this service or product could help them. Take Uber. So many people would be like, I'll just get a cab. But you show them why this is a solution to X, Y, Z. Sure. Like, oh shit, that's actually not a bad idea. Like now that I've used it a little bit, and they've like, I did have a problem as per se. And this is, cured a pain point as well. Sure.
And if you're creating a great customer experience, people are going to use it again. And so with Uber, when you look at Uber, it's convenient, it's easy, it's at a click of a finger. You don't have to pick up your phone and call and wait on hold, and you're able to walk in, walk out without even talking to the driver. And you look at Uber 10 years ago, if you told me I'm getting into a random's car, it would never have happened.
No.
Like, I'd look at you as if you're an alien. If you told me I'm going to get into a random person's house on an Airbnb, it would never happen. No. People will throw rocks at you thinking, what are you talking about? But the reality of it is, the world is very much going through innovation, and it's going through a revolution at the moment. And I think we're living in a very interesting time. You know,
I was just touching on then. So obviously how you sell a product, how you sell a service, and with the business Baresop that you're working heavily with there, and in your big thing on saving the planet on plastics and things like that. How much like that? Going through the website, having a look at some of the social media, that's very much an in your face kind of. We want people to know this and know that that's what we're trying to achieve. How far does that last before like people go, that's not why I want to buy the product. Like it's
Sure.
cool. You can tell me you save plastic, or maybe it's 10% of proceeds go to world poverty.
Yep.
I go, I want a good product, or like it's like it's protein powder. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't taste good.
Sure.
Like it's, so where does that actually enough become enough? Product's got to be up there still.
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, with Baresop in particular, we're very much a purposeful profit company, right? So purpose is first and foremost, and we are genuinely solving a problem. And the company was started purely to support in solving that problem. And it's a big global problem that touches over 1 billion people. We know this. Now, when you look at the model, obviously, whilst we're solving a problem, we also want customers to adopt the product. And without customers adopting the product and without us being commercially viable, we can't solve that problem. That's a purposeful problem.
Yep.
So basically what we've done is we've looked at how do we create a product that doesn't impact the customer experience or journey. If anything, it improves it. Okay. So obviously you're creating a good customer experience. The second to that is obviously creating a good product that lasts and does the job that it needs to do, whilst also helping and causing an impact, right? So a lot of the customers that we initially adopted were all about impact, and all they cared about was the environment. A lot of people now are just using us because first and foremost, it's a lighter product. It's easy to store. We don't have to think about it because we get on a subscription. A whole lot of other benefits.
So that became like the environmental or the plastics became the let's get our foot in the door aspect of it. And now it's kind of like, all right, now we can roll off the back of our larger user base and people that are using the product and word of mouth and other methods.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, again, it comes back to our big audacious goal, which is to eliminate 1 billion plastic bottles by 2035. So we're always working backwards from that specific purpose. So everything we do in the business, specifically in that business, is purely driven by that goal.
I don't, it's probably not a purpose. Let's say a company like L'Oreal or something like that in a similar sort of product. I don't know the product exactly. They're like, we're going to do the same thing.
Go for it.
You just kind of go, hey, you can still sell water to people these days. Like we'll find a way to sell it still. Or how do you battle with a company of that size being like, hey, we've done exactly what you do.
Sure.
What now? Like what's your unique point now?
Yeah. Look, it's very difficult to battle with a company like L'Oreal. They're massive. They've got unlimited budgets. They've got global exposure. But they also have a strategy, right? And they don't tend to deviate from the strategy. And if they do, they're slow to move. And the beauty about being a small to medium business, it allows you to pivot quickly. It allows you to move much quicker than the bigger guys. And so ultimately what happens one day is that the bigger guys like L'Oreal come and acquire your business because they don't want to invest a lot of money and time into the R&D, which is great for us. Now, fortunately enough, we've created a product that's quite difficult to duplicate. In fact, L'Oreal has tried to play into the waterless space. And they did struggle for a little bit. And one of their executives actually joined our advisory board because she was so passionate about the product. She wanted to start that company herself. She couldn't get her head around the R&D process and how to get there. And so she ended up joining us, which is great. So the other thing we've done is we've patented the technology. So a lot of products in the market, you'll see traditionally have water component, which is 90% of the product. So you're not actually solving the problem because ultimately the carbon emission impact becomes from a heavy product being shipped around the world. And the plastic, obviously. And then the second element is that a lot of products in the market are tablet form. And tablet form, when the business was initially launched, I actually bought into the company 2 years later, but initially when the founder launched that business, she did a big discovery into consumer base and said, okay, what do you like? What don't you like about the tablet form? What do you like about glass bottles? What do you like about aluminium bottles, etc., to understand the market better rather than just going and launching a business.
Spending a shit ton of money and be like, let's hope it sticks.
Which is the way people do it, which pisses me off. But anyway, so what the feedback was basically that people don't trust what's in the tablet. They don't know what they're putting on their skin. They're worried that there's a lot of chemicals in it. and they've got no idea what's going on.
Do you think that's because it's not the normal,
It's not normal
looking product?
Correct.
Like
it's
they're
not.
like, this is different.
Yeah.
Change. People don't like change.
And if you buy the product and you have to wait for the thing to mix for an hour, you know when you buy something new from the shop, you open it up and the first thing you want to do is use the product.
You don't want to be like, and sit there for a little bit. Yeah.
And that's exactly what you do with this product. So you're actually amending the customer experience and impeding the speed. And so ultimately we wanted to create a customer experience that's better than what you've got now, but also you solve a problem. And we've been able to do that. You know, you can mix our product. It's a powder formulation that turns into foam, and you can use it straight away. You don't have to wait. It's easy to store. You can get on a subscription. It's fully biocompostable, so it's fully 360, 180, or 360 sustainable. Everything in the business we do is sustainable from start to finish, and that's our mission. So that's where we're going. Yeah.
In terms of let's rewind someone's business journey. They haven't got to the stage where they're even, like we said, you don't want to spend a shit ton of money and then be like, fuck. I'll just put all my life savings down the drain. How do you know you've got a good business idea, and how do you test the market?
Yeah, sure. How do you know you've got a good business idea? Okay, so when you look at the fundamentals of what allows a business to succeed versus not succeed, you know, when we look at businesses in general, we know that 1% of them succeed. So 99% have failed. When we look at those 1% that succeed, there's two key elements that make a business succeed, and that is timing and people. So if I was to launch a CD recorder tomorrow, it's very unlikely that it's probably going to succeed because we've passed those days. Whereas if I launched an AI, you know, cordless, handless product that plays music in 3 seconds without me looking at anything or saying anything, and it's all based on AI, could work well because the AI is a hot topic at the moment, right? So timing is number one. The second part is, why are you that person to ensure that that business goes to where it needs to go? So what I mean by that is, if you're in the fitness industry, why is it that you're launching I don't know, let's call it a logistics business or whatever, right? Like, why are you that person that's going to do a better job than anyone in the world to launch that company? Then the other element, the thing you need to think about is that, does the problem touch 1 billion people? Because you want the problem to be large enough to be able to launch it, okay? Because even if you get 1% market share, it's large enough to make a substantial impact to you. And then you want to fall in love with the problem, right? Because business is bloody difficult, if people tell you, and you're never going to stick around, or nor are you going to go through the challenges unless you fall in love with the problem and you're so passionate about the problem to solve it. So when we're talking about not spending a lot of money and a lot of time and energy while we're testing what's going on, there's a lot of different ways, like launching a EOY form, for example, like an interest form. Saying, okay, I've got something coming out. This is what it is. Would you use it? And if you're getting 1,000 forms back saying, hey, we would love this product, then you can go and build a product.
Someone that doesn't have a platform, though. Let's say you're just John on the corner of the block, and you feel like you got this idea, and you're like, no one knows who I am. Is that just about running some paid ads to kind of get that in front of people to test that way, or what's the method?
I think you need to build an audience, I think, first and foremost, because people won't buy anything unless they like you as a person. So you need people to buy into you first and foremost, and then whatever you have to offer, you know, you'll probably do well. So when you look at celebrities like The Rock and these big stars launching tequila brands and alcohol companies, they can launch anything and everything. Very likely it's going to succeed because they've got a big audience who buy into them, right? So I'd probably suggest building an audience. And there's obviously multiple ways to do that. And then beyond that is, test with your audience, you know, and just ask and experiment. And I always say, whenever you start something and you've got this vision for a product, you're a good leader by selling the vision, right? And people buy into the vision. Now, for that to succeed, you need to build a community, and you need to build people that come along the journey and back you, right? Whether they buy a product, whether they talk about your product, etc. to make sure you're creating a movement of change, basically.
Yeah. So, like a common theme with these businesses that start to do quite well is that, like you said, it's not some fitness guy that goes into logistics. A lot of the time it's like this person has been likely in this industry or impacted by this.
Sure.
And they've seen that the problem and how it can be solved, and therefore they implement it. Example, PT, I see day to day how I know what clients' issues are, so I know how to build a product to solve that problem. If someone had never walked on the gym floor before and they go, I'm going to do fitness stuff, they might be like, I actually don't know what their true problems are. And then that comes back to then the messaging in the marketing. Sure. If you don't know how to talk to the person as well, that's a challenge of growth.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can start to bring others in and things like that, but to get off the ground.
Yeah. An idea is an idea, but you need to be involved in the space or know the space before you're going in there, right? Yeah. Like you might have experience in the fitness industry, and then you might come out of the industry, and at some point you might launch a tech product into the fitness industry. Yeah. What you could do is obviously test the product with gyms or with fitness experts, etc. With I call them subject matter experts, right? Like I knew nothing about sustainability or personal care, right? Yeah. So we brought expertise to the table who know better than anyone else in that space to support us.
Yeah.
Right. And you can do the same. Like you don't have to always be the expert. A lot of founders that we see, are product led because they know how to create a product. Yeah. I'm a commercial guy, so I come in and I can see where the gaps are and I can move it from, 0 to 1 or 1 to 100. Mm-hmm. But I think, you need to understand the space.
Yeah. And that's the importance then potentially like diving into, say, the investment point of view, where you're strategic with the people that you're looking to get on board. If you're a product whiz and you know nothing about running a business, then probably find someone that's more in that side. Or if you understand business and product, but you have no idea about marketing, let's try and find someone that could help us both from a financial point of view, but a knowledge point of view as well. Should that be the main focus though, finding two? Or, I mean, it would... Depends probably
depends
on the
situation,
what you need.
But it depends on what you need. Early on, it's great to have strategic investors because they can bring a lot of value to the table beyond cash. Mm-hmm. There's what's called sweat equity, which is people putting their time, and then you've got obviously knowledge base expertise, and it's important to bring that on early, so that you can leverage off that. Yeah. And then later on, it might be that cash is more important. Or I know a company, for example, they brought in a CEO of a very large alcohol brand. I won't disclose, but, they brought him in not for only expertise, but with a very clear exit strategy of that business, acquiring that business. So he's almost telling them, okay, this is what we need to acquire you guys. This is how we're going to build it. We're going to advise you. Yep. They build it, they execute, and they put in the hard yards. And then ultimately, you've got a very clear plan to exit. Yeah.
In terms of then, so startup, why should everyone look at getting an investor or getting some form of investment, whether that's financial or mentorship when starting a business, or launching a product? So they found market fit, cool. We know this is something that can work. Why would someone decide to go, no, I'm going to bootstrap this versus I'm going to find an investor?
Look, I know a lot of people that hate bringing on investors because first and foremost, they never want to dilute themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I actually think quite the opposite. I think it's always good to have relevant people at the table. And if they've got minority shareholding, they don't have control. Mm-hmm. And, as a director, it's always in your best interest to look after your shareholders. And that's ultimately your core responsibility. There's no right or wrong when it comes to raising capital, right? You could bootstrap and you can own 100% of a business and that business could be worth $10 million and that's great and you're happy with that. Or you might see a bigger vision like an Uber that you want to take globally, and unfortunately with your own funding, you can't support that rate of growth, nor can you become that large. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately you need to bring people on the journey to be able to support that journey, okay? So I'm okay with owning 50%, 30%, 5% of a much larger pie at a much larger global scale. Now, I'm a shareholder of different companies that are at a smaller scale, some have bigger scales, and percentages vary, but there's no right or wrong. I personally think you need to test. I know that there's product market fit, because ultimately you're responsible for people's funding,
Yep.
right? So you want to know that you can give them a return as an investor, and you want to know that you're doing what's in their best interest. Yeah.
What happens when you start, like you get someone on board
Mm-hmm.
and then clash? You start to disagree, like there's disagreements. Let's say they're not you said you got to take care of your shareholders, and then maybe this person had a vision that's different to what the shareholders want, like, and it's there's some form of clashing coming. Is that maybe an error before they even came on board? Like, you probably should have seen that you guys just weren't a good fit for each other as well.
Well, I think it's important to build relationships over time and understand the people you're doing business with in general and all your stakeholders across your business. Obviously you've got silent investors, and you've got people that are happy to just give you money and sit and wait, and they wait 10 years until, there's an outcome. There's some people that want to be more involved, and that's okay. You just need to have that open conversation early on to understand what are their expectations. And some companies might not want people to be involved, and they don't want people to have their say, and they're happy to bring advisory for that. And that's okay as well. So I think it's just important to build relationships with the right people to go, okay, well, I feel like there's alignment. Like, ultimately, if there's values alignment, mission and vision alignment, then it's very difficult for things to go wrong.
Yeah.
And when they do, ultimately at the core, you still align, which is important. Okay.
So the disagreements you're having, or the clashing you're having, is it's fighting between trying to be right and trying to win the argument or the disagreement. It's like, well, at the end of the day, if we always aim to be right, that means that you may be wrong, I may be wrong, but we're going to get to where we want to go still, whether that means I don't sleep well one night because I'm like, that's not what I fucking wanted.
Yeah. I think it's important to have... I always look at teams, for example, that have two co-founders, okay? And if you have one co-founder, let's say you need to make an important decision, and your decision on that outcome is that you don't want to do that action, and the other co-founder goes, nah, we need to do it.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, an ideal world, everyone wants what's in the best interest of the company. So let's put aside egos and put aside what we want. What is going to be the best outcome for the company? If we still can't agree, I always suggest to founders to bring in like a non-executive director, which essentially sits as that third person. And what he does is it's also almost like a mediation. So when it becomes big, important decisions, and there's obviously things like shareholders agreement and different drag-along rights and different rights that you've got in shareholders agreements around decision-making, it's important to really structure that in a way that is short-term, medium-term, long-term, based on what you're looking to do with the business, right? Yeah. And so if I bring in a non-executive decision and we need two people to agree over one, then we go with that decision because that's what's in the best interest of the company, right? So that's always suggested.
How does someone flipping not from what the investor would look, flipping from what the not product market fit, all those sort of things as well. You're in the investor's shoes. What do you look for? Sure. So then someone knows what they need to bring to the table when pitching to an investor of any kind.
Yeah. So generally speaking, the first thing that investors look for is right people to be founders. Do they have the right initiative? Do they have the persistency required? Do they have the conviction that they believe in what's going to work? Are they willing to give everything it takes, literally, to make sure it works? They're bought in 110%. They're sleeping, breathing, doing everything with this company, and they love it and passionate about it, and more importantly about the problem that they're solving before even the solution. That's the core element that people look for, that they want to be able to know, hey, I'm buying into the right ambitious person. Like Elon Musk sleeps in the office, right? Like you can't get more than that, right? So that's at the core. The second thing is obviously they want to see that the market's big enough to be able to tackle and there's a large enough opportunity on the table, right? Because what investors really at the core look for is returns, investor returns. And so can I see this business, if it got to the scale that it needed to go to, does it have the opportunity to get there? And then ultimately, is it in the right market? Does it align with my values? Does it have the right revenue model? Does it fit the right business model? Like a lot of investors look for B2B SaaS because they're reoccurring revenue businesses. So they know that whether you're using the product or not using the product, you're paying me on a monthly basis. And the more users I have, it's very easy to measure. It's the more users I have, the more they're paying, the more I'm going to make as a business on a recurring level. Whereas a D2C, direct to consumer brands, they're very difficult because they're one-off purchases, or they're not reoccurring models. Okay.
And that's why you touched on, like, say with Baresop, you look at the subscription model to try and add some form of recurring to what you're doing as well.
And it makes sense for the consumer. It makes a better customer experience. And so if we're looking after the consumer, and then secondary to that, it helps, investors, fantastic.
Yeah, it's a win-win on both sides of the table. And then that obviously everything just grows together faster
for sure,
because everyone's working coexistently as well. I wanted to touch on, I don't know if you're familiar much with Ben Francis, like the CEO of Gymshark and the founder. And he said in a podcast not too long ago, to get a business from 0 to 10 million, you essentially have to be very dictatorial. You tell people what you want. People will tell you this isn't going to work. You ignore comments, you ignore feedback, and you do what the hell you want, and you force your business into success. Mm-hmm. Is this a nice method to think of when you're the solo, or there's no investors, there's no shareholders, to the point of before, like the potential of clashing or anything like that as well? Like, if you have to list other people, you can't necessarily just, this is the way we're doing it, because there's other people involved as well now.
Yeah. Look, to his point it always comes down to the gut. Mm-hmm. Like, do I believe in this so much that I'm willing to cut out the noise and I'm going to do whatever it takes to go, right? Now, if it comes from an egotistic place, that's probably not right. But if it comes in the sense that you're so confident that it's going to work, and then you can bring people along the journey, then great. Yeah. It takes a lot of effort to get a business off the ground, right? It's like the analogy of a rocket. How you need to put in a lot of fuel before it takes off. But once you've got velocity,
you're off.
It's spot on. Yeah. Like, business is exactly that. And I think to his point, the 0 to 10 million, absolutely, you need to be ruthless. Like, you really need to get the outcome that you want, and just not stop at all until you get that outcome. And you can do it in a nice way, obviously, but ultimately, like, we've got employees across our businesses, and as valuable as they are, and as much as we're building a culture, we need to make sure that it's commercially viable for us to run a business. And you need to be able to push people in the right direction and coach them and guide them to be able to support them. Because if they look after you and you look after them, it's a greater relationship, right? But yes, early on, like, you just need to go with your gut and with your conviction. Like, when you believe in something and you believe it in it fully. Like, I mean, the amount of no's that the founder of Airbnb got, early on, like, I think he spoke to about 200 or something investors that didn't back him. And then there was one guy who backed him. I think he wrote him $120,000 check, like a ridiculous valuation. And now he's worth like in the multis and multi-millions, from that early on investment. But it took that one person to believe as much as you do believe, and then you're off to the races.
So it's kind of breaking down what Ben has said there. Like, it's not it's and how you attack that, how it's from the passion point of view. It's from the understanding of why you got into it in the first place. Is like, no, this is the vision. So like 0 to 10 mil is kind of like, we're not streamlining from what our intentions were from day one. And then when you get to 10 mil, you can start to be like, all right, let's open things up a little bit more now. Like, we've got probably some nice cash flow. You've got some money in the bank ready to start to spend and maybe test and trial or expand at a more rapid rate as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, there's different ways to scale businesses. You can scale a business by, getting a larger head count to be able to accelerate things faster, doing larger partnerships. Or acquisition, for example, a lot of people don't talk about. Why not acquire a business that's already cash flowing and is net profiting, and you're essentially buying cash flow and you're scaling a lot faster. So there's different methods to be able to scale. Obviously, when you get into that $10 million point, then you can do a bit more, but to get to that $10 million point is always difficult. So, and I always go back to the saying of, like, where you think or what you think the business is going to be when you start it versus what it actually becomes is like complete opposite. It's just crazy how that works. I mean, what Facebook became is not what Facebook was ever going to be.
No, it wasn't the initial intention, was
Never, So, And if you look at 99.95% of companies, it's exactly the same thing.
So would some of that be same problem solved potentially? The problem's been solved differently to how they initially maybe thought it was going to be in some cases as well.
Based on inside, based on how things change and how times change and how tech changes. And there's so many different impactful things that happen along the journey that deviate you from where you're going. And be, different inputs. So you might have to pivot a lot of times, you will.
Yeah.
But as long as you believe and you keep going, that's the main thing.
I was going to say there's a couple of things that comes to my attention when hearing that is kind of like, so one is surviving.
Yeah.
Like it's the changing times and everything like that. You saw a Blockbuster get smashed out by a Netflix or something because they weren't ready to adapt to the changing times. So there's one way you can lose there as well.
Yeah.
And obviously no business that we probably see today has been the same their whole existence either. Like it's
can't,
like you said, Facebook was never thinking, hey, we're gonna make a large chunk of our money, a lot of money from ads.
Yeah.
Because ads weren't a thing. Like it's to the point that they were there as well, which is so then where does someone like an ads, let's take that example, can for an early business become a bit of a shiny object sort of syndrome?
Always
thing.
does.
So how do you know when, all right, now what are some maybe key points? It can be a little bit hard to, I guess, determine this when you go, that may be a good idea we need to take on board in comparison to shiny object. Push that away.
It comes down to what your customer is telling you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're seeing that your customer is telling you that it's great and you're getting the right feedback, or they're going, hey, we don't like this, but we like this, and you adapt and then you pivot, and then you almost find what's called product market fit. And at that point, there's more consumers and it comes down to turning on the tap.
Yep.
Then it's the real deal, right? But like you're going to go through probably quite a few failures before you get that feeling.
Yeah.
Like for the first one to ever succeed is very rare. But yeah, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, perfect. So then when it comes to an investor,
Yep.
and so I guess a key component of that is faster growth.
Sure.
You don't go into business to make no money most of the time, and if you do, then that's not business, I guess, like in a sense.
Yeah.
But what is the downside of fast growth? Or is the downside when you don't have the right people to sustain that?
Yeah, I mean, we saw this probably over the past 2 years where companies are always focused. A lot of companies were focusing on growth at all costs. And they were taking immense amount of capital into their business at very large valuations, and were spending money in the business like it wasn't even money. It was like water.
Yeah.
And now they're in positions where either they've run out of cash and they can't raise any more, or they have had to do a down round, meaning that their valuation has gone down, and so it costs their investors money rather than making them money.
Yep.
And it's just not a good position to be. And so they didn't necessarily think about profitability. They thought about growth at all costs. So if, for example, I've got an opportunity on the table to do a partnership that might cost me $1 million to initiate, but it doesn't have a direct return on investment, and it's not necessarily going to make me profit, that's a long-term brand building exercise that you probably shouldn't be doing now until you build profitability to then have cash to invest into much larger components. Because in business, the way you look at things is you spend capital and you're growing, and then again, you're sort of getting to a point where you've lost the capital and then you're growing again. And then it's like that cycle. So even though you might have made $1 million this year and then you're making 10 million and then 100 million and then $1 billion, eventually the more you're making, the more you're spending as well. So it's going to come down to how, at the core, does your microeconomic data make sense? Like the margin, profit margins, etc., make sense. And if at the core it does, and you can get adoption, you can get customers, and you can always listen to what your customers are saying and adapt and be able to move with the times, then you'll do well. Like when we look at Blockbuster scenario and Netflix, is because they didn't adapt.
Yep.
And unfortunately these days, I think there's like something like, I can't remember what the number was, but millions of businesses just, in the US alone, So there's more competition than ever
And how
before.
quickly, like the compound interest of technology and how that starts to push products. Like if you just looked at AI as you can't fucking keep up. Like and so if people are creating businesses around this or using this tool to grow their business, doing all this sort of, it's very easy to be left behind in the modern world as well. How do you, like AI, big noisy topic. Everyone's like, I'm going to start an AI product, which, might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Should more people maybe be looking at AI as a way to use within the business, not necessarily just creating an AI product?
I personally believe it's just a tool to allow you to become more creative, right? So it does the heavy lifting for you, but you need to give it life, essentially, right? So, it's a robot at the end of the day, right? So it doesn't have a heartbeat. And it doesn't necessarily know the feeling that you're feeling. So the better you direct the AI, the better the outcome will be for you, right? I genuinely believe that over the next 3 years, we will see the first billion-dollar company that has one employee. And you wouldn't be able to do that ever without some sort of artificial intelligence or machine learning component.
How does that impact investors then? Like moving forward, knowing that that's going to only get more possible.
I mean, if the business is growing and it's going in the right direction and it's profitable, I mean, it shouldn't impact an investor in any bad shape or form.
They can put money in to do more of what you're already doing and continue to scale, same sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the history of unicorns, a billion-dollar company, I mean, if we look at 20 years ago, it took probably 20,000 employees to become a unicorn. I think Instagram from memory became a unicorn with 13 employees, obviously, but then became larger and larger.
Yeah.
So what AI is doing and technology is doing is allows you to have less headcount, much larger companies.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. I think it's a great opportunity. Like as a 23-year-old, I start to look at it and I start to go, it gives more, and not even just a 23. Let's say you've come from not much money. Maybe you haven't had a great upbringing, whatever it is.
Sure.
You're in a situation now where if you have a phone or you have a computer, you make that investment of $2,000, which most people can hustle and find.
Yeah.
You've now got an opportunity to maybe just get to an MVP of a software product or start to talk with suppliers and figure out how everything is going to work.
Yeah.
Which is just incredible because there's so many great minds and ideas out there that get missed because they don't have the access to information, which they now have through social media, and they didn't have the access to the tools to create these things, which they now have potentially greater access to with AI and things like that.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Like to just think that this day and age, if you can't start or if you can't do, anything in business, like it's the easiest time in history to get something going. In saying that, like the financial markets are very difficult now, and every business owner I'm talking to is it's either they're thriving or they're in trouble.
Do you think that's because of competition as well? Because now people go, let's say you work for a marketing agency, you're like, well, hang on, I can do all this myself.
Yeah.
So now there's 10 businesses that came from that one business because they all went their own way.
Yeah. Look, I feel just in general, like costs of living in general and costs of doing business has gone up dramatically over the past, 3 years. And if you've got a business and you haven't been able to put up your prices at the rate of what cost of business is doing, then obviously it's going to give you a worse off outcome. But ultimately at this time, it's when companies also thrive by bringing more value to the marketplace. To be able to warrant a larger ticket item to go, well, people are happy to pay for it because we're adding so much value that the price tag is just a price tag. Yeah.
So how do you navigate that? I guess like it's, to the point of, let's say an Apple product, there's value in it also because of how much it costs. It's luxury. It's the Mercedes of a phone sort of thing. How do you navigate that then in, people maybe are struggling to spend money and maybe you've got a problem you want to scale and grow and solve for many people. But then if people look at a price tag and they go, oh, well, that's cheap. How, like, does that come back to the branding side of things? It's like, you may want to have a large impact, but people don't like the cheap price as well, as much as that sounds weird.
Yeah, look, there's been many companies that have cheaper prices that have been very successful, like Alibaba's extremely successful business, and they're known for cheaper price tags. Chemist Warehouse
Yeah.
is a discounted pharmacy, and they've done extremely well. One of the most successful companies in Australia. I personally, I hate businesses that have a lower than usual price tag versus their competitors, because it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, and a race to the bottom is a race to the bottom. I always think about how can I give so much value in a product or in a service or in whatever we're doing to be able to warrant to charge what you want to charge.
Yeah.
Right. And if that's at the core focus, then ultimately profitability and revenue shouldn't be an issue if people are buying into that value.
Yeah. So back to the point then as well, is that your creator that we said earlier is creating in your marketing and in how you're communicating the value of this product as well, is not flushing the features, but flushing the feelings and the problem you're solving, because then you really, like, if someone, weight loss, if there was that magic pill out there, rather than saying like, this is a pill, it's like, cool, it's a pill, well done. You've said, I'll strip weight and you'll lose 15 kilos in a week. Then like, well, I'll pay 10 grand for one of those because I've spent so much money trying to do this over my whole life anyway. It's demonstrating the value, not the feature, to get that as well.
Yeah, I mean, features mean nothing, unless you understand what it does for you.
Yeah. Like a feature is a way of solving the problem.
Correct. Yeah, like I need to understand why, what is it going to do for me, you know? As soon as you start reducing the time frame of something that needs to be done and you add value, then you can charge more money. It goes back to the analogy, like you said, that pill that you lose 10 kilos, today, for example, you're willing to pay for it, right? But if it takes me 3 years and a lot of effort, then I'm not willing to pay for it, So the shorter the time frame, the more value you can add, the more you can charge people. We know this. But you need to make sure it works. And you need to make sure that people are getting results.
If someone's looking at going into business, why would you advise that they maybe don't? Like, entrepreneurship is a flashy, a snazzy word.
Yeah.
Why should someone not go into business?
Yeah, I think people use it too lightly, and it's actually very frustrating because unfortunately for the younger guys, it creates this perception that business is fancy and luxurious and like built status, but ultimately it's one of the hardest things you're ever going to go through. And people don't tell you that, which is really annoying. And every day is going to be different. And some days are going to be fantastic. And you're going to have days that are unbelievable in the morning and are terrible in the evening, and you want to jump off a bridge. So unless you can go through that mental waves, then you shouldn't be getting into business. And unless you've got thick skin to be able to put up with anything, don't get into business. Yeah, it's one of those things. In saying that, it's highly rewarding as well. Like you get to learn a lot, you get to experience a lot, you get to, focus your energy and attention on what you genuinely want to do, and what you might be genuinely passionate about. And yeah, like ultimately you want to go into a business building a team, like a strong team, and having good support systems around you.
Yeah. I think that's interesting as well, because nothing you said there was about skills. No, like you're obviously, they become important, but skills can be learned.
Yeah.
That thick skin, that mentality, the values you hold as well, they're a lot harder to teach. Like it's very, what's the old saying? Like you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
Like, as a PT, holy shit, that is true. It's the amount of times you could, even then you could put the pill on the table and they still might not swallow it.
Correct.
So to find that person. So I imagine that would be something that then as an investor, or even in the hiring process as well, two sides of that, you may really start to look at what someone's an attitude, number one, or like some combination of attitude and skill in that process as well. Yeah.
It's all about how bad you want it, basically, and what you're willing to give up and sacrifice to get the outcome that you want. Like that's genuinely, if we take it back to the core and the simplicity and the fundamentals, it's literally that. How bad do you want it? Don't look at all the fancy shit online, because, that comes very later on in life,
Yeah.
So look at what do we have to go through in that time? And it's difficult. In saying that, like I personally love the journey. I think it's very important to love the journey. And for me, it's very rewarding to know that I can add a lot of value, to enormous amount of people and make an impact.
Yeah, I think it's always powerful when you know you can sit there, put the head on the pillow at night and know morally that you're helping people, but hey, I'm doing okay as well. Like that's not something you should feel ashamed. And I think money, especially coming from Adelaide, you feel this massively and you see this massively. Like you're scared of making money. And this is something I challenge. Like it's almost like I'm creating this product. I'm like, I don't really want to launch it just in case I make money.
Yeah,
like there's this, that hesitation. Like it's, should I be taking people's money or should I just, but like it's going, hey, if you can sit there and be like, I am helping people, this product is bringing benefit to the world, reducing plastics, whatever it may be, that's okay if you're making a nice income off of that as well.
There's nothing wrong with it. Like, ultimately it comes down to being morally and ethically minded at the core, because as long as you don't burn bridges with anyone in business, because the world is very small, and like you said, put your head on the pillow and sleep well at night, then that's great. Yeah. Right. But yeah, it's all going to come down to the impact you're gonna drive, and the more impact you drive, and the more meaningful and impactful things that you can do, right? The more you can make commercially, and money is just like a byproduct, you know? Yeah.
What are some things you do personally, or you do with your teams and people that you're working with to deal with that mental stress of business? Like it's the mental calorie burn is quite high.
Yeah, it's very high. What do we do? So I like to guide a lot of the employees through the way they should do things. But for me, it's like I want to bring people to the table when I employ people that can bring a lot of value in an area specific in the business, so that essentially they tell me where they need my support rather than me going to them, hey, saying you should do this, this, and this, right? Because then
personal attack now.
Yeah, we don't need to be babysitting people. Ultimately you're here to support the business and support us, right? How I like to challenge the mental thing is obviously just having some sort of work-life balance is important, and do what you actually genuinely enjoy. Because if you're there as an employee, let's say, and you don't enjoy being there, that creates a very bad negative culture, and we don't want that. That's toxic to the business.
Not good for anyone. It's not good for the person in the chair
it's
working.
Not good for him.
Not good for business.
Yeah, I want everyone in the business to be at their A game because they genuinely love it and enjoy it, and that's what they want to do. And with the mental toughness and challenges, obviously we take away those by, doing things outside of just the work environment. Like go take a 10-minute run or walk or whatever. Go outside, let's go to a seminar. Let's do things outside of that. Like we did, last week we took the team to a golfing range, for example, and that was great because just got us out of the office and it was a great environment, et cetera, and we had a tough week. And those little things your employees appreciate.
Yeah. So not waiting, a lot of the time, Christmas show's coming up sort of thing. People always seem to do it at the main event. Don't be afraid to do something fun with your team to try and build a bit of culture within and reward them for the work they're doing as well. Because at the end of the day, yes, they need you there as well, but chances are you need them as well. Like you said, A game. If they're not performing,
very
that's
important.
Challenging. Yeah. How do you're already a father, another one on the way. How do you work-life balance?
Crazy.
What does that look like for someone like yourself?
I don't know. I don't really have work-life balance, but
do you think?
Look,
subjective term as well though.
It is subjective. Work-life balance. I don't know. It's a term that's again another term that's used a lot. I think as long as you understand what's valuable to you first and foremost, and then work through how do you allocate your time and energy in your day towards those things that are meaningful to you, right? That brings you joy and brings you the work-life balance that you're looking for, right? So if I know I'm working on a very exciting project and I'm putting 16 hours today working on that project, then it brings me joy knowing that it's an exciting project that I'm looking forward to bring to life, right? But the way I personally structure my day, it's so regimented that I've got my time allocation based on different things I'm working on and different people that need my attention. And I've done this thing now where I cut down my meetings like substantially because meetings just drain the shit out of you, you know? So I've got like creative time in specific hours locked in. I've got kids time specifically. I've got gym time specifically. I've got, you know, my drive to the office locked in. So everything is scheduled for me. I've just hired an executive assistant, which is very exciting, like a really big step in the right direction to take on that 80% of work that doesn't get the needle moving.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's kind of, you've got something that, you know, create the calendar for you, save the mental calories,
Emails,
some
calendars,
of those sort of things.
all the things that don't get the needle moving.
Do you think people should look at doing that a little bit earlier than maybe, you know, 100%. You feel like you have, like, you're like, ah, fuck, probably should have done that.
Everyone should have an admin person, first and foremost. I'm at a point where I've got a house manager where they come in and they literally manage everything in my house.
Yeah.
If I need my meal prep done, it's done.
Yeah.
If I need the cleaning done, it's done. If I need, with 2 kids around the house and blah, 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 it's crazy. It's mayhem. The more you can understand, okay, as soon as you understand your hourly rate versus what it costs you to delegate things, the sooner you become more efficient and understand how to do things a lot better.
Yeah. Is that also about finding, though, what's important to you, though? Like, it's not, I see, like, say some people that I talk to, and, you know, like it's there's data and then there's people as well. Like you have to balance in a business, you know, that once again, the consumer, how they feel about the product. It's not just about numbers, because long term that impacts, but same with your lifestyle. Like it's, let's say you love cooking.
Yeah.
And maybe you combine those tasks together, that's your work-life balance, but it's also, maybe it's not the best money investment, but you're like, but that's how I enjoy it. And, you know, but I don't enjoy going out and doing heaps of things. I'm just a homebody. Like it's not saying you have to delegate cooking. You have to delegate cleaning. It's finding what things you may not enjoy doing of those things that aren't the move the needle tasks, that aren't the hourly rate sort of thing as well.
Yeah. Hit the nail on the head. Like, obviously you should be doing what you enjoy, and that's your allocation of the flexible work-life balance. But like for me, like I hate cutting the grass. I don't enjoy being in the garden.
No.
Whereas I know a lot of people that do, and that's okay. So do that, and you know, and so I delegate that. Cooking, I don't mind doing cooking, but it takes me a lot of time doing my meal prep, and I just, you know, I'd rather spend the time with the family. For example, on the Sunday, you know, so I'll do that. Or so it comes down to understanding, again, back to what's meaningful to you, and then how can you create more of that meaningful space for you to then be able to to do what's important.
Yeah, perfect.
And I've only understood that over the past 24 months, to be honest. It's something that's quite new.
Do you think, like, so kids develop that a lot faster for you?
Oh yeah, having kids and running a business is like hard to explain.
Yeah. Until you've done it, you don't know.
Yeah, it's tough.
Now, in terms of like valuation and exiting a business, then I've heard you talk in the past about like you should plan to be global from day one.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I look at, you know, starting a business, I'm early days, and I'm like, I want to build this thing to be able to exit, whether or not that is the plan. How does someone increase that valuation? What are things that people should be doing to try and ensure that it is an exitable business without just losing everything you've built?
Yeah, look, I think you need to have a strategy to exit, and what would that potentially look like, and who to, and who would be on your target list, and what are a common, you know, acquirers that look at your type of business and so forth and so on before you even start building that, you know, to exit. I think at the core, as long as you're building a good, meaningful business that is extremely profitable and is doing well and he's got potential for someone to come in and make it even bigger beyond you, then that's your exit strategy. You know, I think first and foremost, focus on building a great business. Okay. Building a lot of IP, so that, because IP is worth a lot more than revenue. So build IP and build processes and systems and trademarking and brand building, etc., to be able to expand. Like you look at Bondi Sands, they did an unbelievable job. You know, when you look at that company, to be able to sell for 450 million on a 10 million EBIT, it's just unheard of. And that is because a big multinational global player came in and went, okay, well, they're doing great. They're across multiple globes, but we can take it from this 450 to 4 billion.
They see their opportunity for growth with their skill set.
And they've got the money and their skill set and their people, etc., etc. So build something meaningful that's big enough and build a community. Like if you have a large enough community that buy into your brand and create that meaningful brand that you can create, then someone will come knocking on your door. Yeah.
When do you know it's the right time to sell? Does that come from a I've lost passion point of view? Or even then, you've lost the passion, just stay as a shareholder and let someone else run the thing, step down as CEO. When do you know?
I think when you feel like you've done what you needed to do in that business. So when you've done what you needed to do and you've taken it to a certain level where you go, okay, it deserves more now, but I can't give it what it deserves. But this big, large, multi-global can, for example, then at that point you should consider it, but it comes to multiple things, is it the right time for you, personally? Is it the right time for, your shareholders? So you have to consider a lot of multiple things, but ultimately at the core, it's like, have I given it everything I have? And can I give it more? And can someone else come and do bigger and better? And is it a good deal? Yeah.
And so sometimes within that, you don't have to sell the company either.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to remove yourself completely.
Not at all.
Or it might be, like you said, if it's personal life, like maybe it's just a time in your life where you just need to remove yourself from the business, reset, and you might be able to come back in the future anyway as well.
Yeah. I mean, you see so many companies get acquired and then get run to the ground, and then the founder comes back and buys them for $1. And, it's common, right? Because they needed a reset or they lost a passion, for example, and they had a good deal on the table. So 99% of the time when you get acquired, a lot of the acquirers would want you to stay on at some capacity.
Yeah.
Right?
Like for a particular duration at least to foresee the transition period.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And that duration period could be 12 months, could be 24 months, could be a month. We don't know, right? It all depends on the deal and the terms. But like I think exit is a great outcome for any business and any shareholder. And it's not easy to do, but everyone strives for it. So.
Perfect. We might wrap things up there. I appreciate your time, Michael. It was really amazing chat, and there's lots there for people, whether, from different aspects of business, whether you're in a business looking for an investor or you haven't even got a product yet.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
Cheers.
mate. Cheers.